Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar, Becoming a Digital Fundraising Rockstar, Skills You Need in 2018. On this webinar, we will hone your online skills so you can be more confident in tackling digital fundraising to scale your mission like never before. And well, be the rockstar you were meant to be. So we hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and for your reference, we'll send the recording and the slides to all of you via email after the webinar ends. We also want to encourage your participation in our event today, so please feel free to submit any questions you have to our presenters via the questions box in your control panel. And then at the end of the event, we'll have some time for Q&A with our experts. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel of experts. Bradley Martin is the Senior Director of Customer Acquisition at Kindful. He has over 10 years of experience helping organizations implement and optimize CRMs, marketing automation, and analytics solutions with the goal of providing better insights to drive improved results. Bradley currently works alongside his team at Kindful to provide the nonprofit market with software solutions and make fundraising and donor management easier. We'll also be hearing from Kyle Kiggin, who is part of the customer success team here at Mobile Cause. Kyle plays an integral role for our nonprofit customers by finding the right solutions to their needs and their reach, or to allow them to reach and exceed their goals. He's empowered countless customers to accelerate their fundraising and donor engagement efforts through the nonprofit technology. Now, together, Bradley and Kyle have put together an information-packed agenda for you. We're going to cover the donor lifecycle, fundraising potential with technology, donor communication and social integration, as well as 2 nonprofit success stories that you can replicate. All right, so before we unleash your inner digital fundraising rockstar, I have a quick poll here for us to take. So if you'll look on your screen, go ahead and select from the options here. How familiar are you with using nonprofit technology? Very, somewhat, or not familiar at all? So please go ahead and just select there and hit the submit button at the bottom of that polling interface. And I'll leave this open just for a few more moments before we close it out. Excellent. All right, let me go and close this, and I'll share the results. And looks like the majority of us here fall into that somewhat category. Fair enough. Well, at this point, I'm going to pass things over to Bradley. And what are your thoughts on this poll result?
Yeah, thanks so much, Alex. This is exactly what we'd expect to see, and here at Kindful is what we feel like we see all the time, is people that are on either side of the spectrum, but oftentimes right there in the middle, that they do understand technology, but they're looking for ways to make things easier and to interact with easier technology. And so, yeah. Well, thanks, Alex. I'm really excited today to talk about the donor lifecycle. Lately, this is something we at Kindful have been focusing on a lot, as our goal as a donor management platform is to provide better insights and an easier way to manage your donors. And so we'll just jump right in here. And so first off, I want to cover, what is the donor lifecycle? The donor lifecycle is the journey your constituents take with your organization from the point they learn about you or your organization to engaging. That may be through an event, being a volunteer or a subscriber, etc. And then oftentimes your next goal is to move them on to their first donation, to becoming an advocate or a recurring donor, or even in many cases a major donor. And so really the key things to be focused on through the donor lifecycle, the key stages we promote are acquisition, retention, and upgrade. Now, I think it's important to pay attention to a couple things that you should avoid as you think about your donor lifecycle. If you go on Google and look at search for the donor lifecycle, and you looked under images, what you would find is right off the bat is a lot of images that look like a more recycled approach, where you are, instead of looking at it more like a journey, that you're looking at it more in the way of that you send people through the same cycle each year. And that is what we believe is a little bit of a short-sighted approach, because depending on where your donors are in their journey with your organization, you should really change your messaging. You don't want to just recycle and send the same messaging to individuals each year through the same appeals and same events. It doesn't mean that you necessarily don't need to hold the same appeals or hold the same events, but you want to make sure that as you engage with people around those events, you understand where they are in your life cycle. The other thing that's very important is to ensure that you're not taking a single staged approach. Many pundits in the nonprofit arena and even some other tools and technology that provides donor management would tell you that retention is the very most important metric you should be paying attention to. And I want to be clear, I agree that retention is very important for nonprofit organizations to make sure that you are retaining your donors year after year. But what you do have to realize is that every organization is going to have some attrition and is going to lose some donors. And so to be able to create the most healthy donor life cycle, you need to not only focus just on retention, but also focus on the beginning at acquisition and also on upgrades. And so that, we believe, is the most holistic approach that will help you have the most successful fundraising strategies and in turn see the best results. And so you may say, Bradley, this is great, right? But it sounds like a lot of work. It sounds like a lot of things to track and things like that. So if I'm going to go do all of this, what is the benefit I might see? And so I wanted to hit on those things with you. And so tracking and engaging with your constituents based on their donor lifecycle stage will allow you to create deeper relationships with them. And so more specifically, some of the things that you may see as results, or we would expect for you to see as results, as you started to really put more definition around your donor lifecycle, is the ability, first off, to be more targeted in your messaging, yielding a greater ROI. And so one of the pitfalls we see a lot of folks fall into is that we understand that nonprofit organizations oftentimes have limited resources, and it's a struggle maybe even just to get an appeal out or to get an email even out to your constituents once a month. And what we'd encourage you to do is to say that if you can just take the time to understand and segment your audience just a little bit, you can create a much more targeted approach. And one of the places that we see that organizations actually do this really well is typically with their major donors. You do a very targeted approach to your major donors. You understand how long they've been giving to you, where they are in the life cycle with your organization. And what we would encourage you to do is really just to take that same approach. It may be at a slightly more mass scale, but down to your mid-level donors and below. The second thing you might find is as you start to segment and as you start to really understand where your donors are in the life cycle and their journey with your organization, is you'll find it easier for the why in your appeals and messaging. So one of the things we hear from our organizations that we work with is that oftentimes it makes sense when they get their first donation and they are great about saying thank you and doing good acknowledgments. But sometimes they struggle on how to ask for the next donation or how to ask someone to become a recurring donor. And I think what I'm suggesting here is that if you are really paying attention to where they are in your donor life cycle and how they became a donor, the why becomes much easier. And again, you can do this not only for each individual donor, but do this in a more mass way by just putting in a few key tracking pieces that will help you understand where people came from and how they're interacting with their organization. And then what this leads to is greater trust with your constituents and ultimately leading to less attrition, which is what we all want. We want more of our donors to give to us each month, each year, and staying with us. And so the next thing that we often get asked as we talk about the donor life cycle is how do I stack up? How do I know if I'm doing a good job? And so these were just a couple of things, a couple of metrics that we have found that we think are just useful to be aware of, so you can start to think about how are you stacking up to other nonprofits broadly. And so first off, on average, 1.2% of website visitors should give a donation. And so more simply, if you have 100 people visit your website, a little over one of them should give a donation. If you're getting 2 or 3 out of 100, then you're doing much better than the average. And that stat comes from M&R benchmarks. Secondly, Philanthropy Daily ran a report and said that on average, the yearly retention rate for most organizations is only about 45%. And so if you can imagine just being able to increase that slightly, just by a few percent, then multiplied by the number of donors you have and your average donation, can help you understand the effect that can have. So the larger your donor base and the larger your average donation, the much greater effect it could have just by retaining just a few percent more of your retention of your donors year over year. Lastly, an average recurring donor gives 42% more per year than one-time donors. This to me is one of the most interesting stats here, is that it oftentimes is easier to ask someone to give a smaller monthly amount than one lump sum amount. Now, I understand that many things work on a calendar cyclical way, where that at the end of the year, major appeals make sense to get people to give larger single amounts. But if you can imagine a scenario where sometimes it may make sense to ask someone, instead of giving $100 one time, what if it only gave you $10 a month, and that turns into $120 for the year? So it's a way to upgrade your donors by asking for a recurring donation rather than a one-time donation. And so as we go through this, how do you get started? How can you really start working on tracking your donors and understanding your donor lifecycle better? So the first thing I would say is just start tracking your donors. And what do I mean by that? I want to be really clear, because there is a lot of technology out there and it gives out a lot of data and information. But the thing I would say is, if you don't have a single place where you can understand, let's say, Bradley Martin, I'm a donor for your organization, and I wrote a check at, let's say you do a major gala, I wrote a check at your event this year in your special appeal portion of your event. But then also, I came online and I gave through PayPal, let's say on your website, or through text to give or something like that. You really need a place where you can see that Bradley Martin gave all those 3 ways, and you can see that clearly. And you can see all my interactions in one place versus just seeing them as single interactions and not understanding that they all tie back to one person. And so that really goes into organizing your data. And so once you have all that data in one place, you want to make sure you have the right information to be able to organize it and segment it into meaningful data sets. And so this might be a great time to evaluate if it's time for a donor management system to help centralize all your data. Or you may have someone on your staff that is an Excel wizard who is able to do all of these things via VLOOKUP and pivot tables. That's not me, but I'm sure we have seen some amazing spreadsheets that some organizations have come with, where they are able to really do some very fascinating things and understand where people are in their journey with them just using Excel. I've already mentioned this a little bit, but next, you really want to start reporting and segmenting in meaningful ways. And so the donor lifecycle, we hit on that it's acquisition, retention, and upgrades, but I would encourage you to really break that out into a couple of different donor segments or segments of your donor database. And so one of the most simple ones to point out is by donation amount. So let's say the top 10% of your donors give over $10,000 a year. That would be one segment you would want to really make sure you treat differently than a segment that gives on average $100 a year. But you want to be careful to make sure that you're not ignoring those $100 donations, and that you're not, and that you're making sure that you're still making them feel like you understand where they are in their life cycle, and you're sending messaging that is at the right time with the right thing in it. So lastly, act on your results. Engage your constituents in a much more meaningful way, utilizing those key segments. And the last thing I'll say here is I would very much encourage you, as you start to go through this process of tracking your full donor life cycle in a more holistic way, is don't spend too much time concerned about getting all of it figured out. Instead, when you start to track retention and then you start to track acquisition, and really upgrades are very fascinating to me, and I think they can have a huge benefit on your organization when you start to focus on them. When you start, what you'll start to do is you'll start to see opportunities. When you see an opportunity to make an impact, take the opportunity right then. It might just be crafting a single email that goes out to, let's say it's the month of June, and you realize, wow, we have had a large amount of donors lapse this June that gave this June last year but haven't given in between. That's a great time to reach out, and that might be a awesome opportunity to increase your donations year over year just by keeping some of those donors. So my encouragement here is don't try to spend too much time planning, because we've seen organizations spend weeks, months, sometimes even years trying to figure all this out, and realizing that all along the way they could have been making integral, iterative improvements. And so the thing I'll leave you with here is just a cool little saying that's, don't underestimate the power of data. If used properly, it can scale fundraising for your cause to a whole new level. So again, I wouldn't overthink it. I would be careful not to dive too deep. Pay attention to a couple of those key metrics along the way. How well are you doing at acquiring, retaining, and upgrading your donors? And then starting to segment those into just a handful of key segments, and you will find that you can find many opportunities to have a greater impact on your ability to fundraise and create a better fundraising strategy. I want to thank everyone for giving me the time to speak on this today. I really enjoyed the opportunity.
Excellent. Thank you, Bradley. That information was really interesting and indeed helpful. So next up, we're going to be hearing from Kyle. Kyle, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Alex, for the warm introduction at the top of the call here. It's really excellent to be included with such good company like Bradley and to hear about the donor life cycle. I'm going to be talking more about some great emerging technology and Mobile Cause offers with text-to-donate software. And this is really an important part of a digital strategy. And as you'll see, there's many important reasons why to use text-to-donate. Oh, pardon me, I just skipped a slide too far. So we want to use text-to-donate here in our digital campaigns because it's really about access. I think access is an important thing to consider here because we're trying to engage all of the folks who we've interacted with over time. And when you're able to verify phone numbers as mobile numbers, you can really get to this deeper connection with everyone. So ensuring these messages are read is really important, and it's not offered by a lot of other channels. This leads to some really cool interactions like setting up donations in any amount, not just a $5 or $10 donation. You can encourage recurring giving, and all of this is through a much more personal experience. Now, the way Mobile Cause does this is through setting up these branded keywords. And that keyword you would enter as a message and send by text to a short code like 41444. And within Mobile Cause, you'll have created a donation form where people will be routed to when they text this keyword. And that allows them to set up a gift, either one time or recurring. It could just be even a volunteer form. But through donation forms, you can show these results on a fundraising thermometer. And once all that's set up, it's a great opportunity to verify your mobile numbers and begin promoting your text to donate campaign. Now, these branded keywords we're talking about are kind of just a personal message that's related to your campaign that gives you an easy call to action. So whenever you're promoting stuff in print or email, social media, or even just word of mouth at the grocery store, you can give someone a really easy way to get connected with your organization. Now, I like to have fun with this. You can definitely create something memorable and related to your organization or campaign. It doesn't have to be something very generic. You can definitely have fun with it. And this allows you to have people text in to initiate a pledge to make donations with reminders that will be sent to them to fulfill those gifts. You can set up custom auto response messages, which allow you to control all of the language that's sent back to them and send them different links to different content. And it could be as simple as just a subscription for news alerts. Now, these keywords are, something that you want to keep short and sweet. A single word is best if possible, so it's easy to remember and hard to misspell. And you can even test out these keywords in your own messaging app to see how autocorrect might change your keyword. Now, when we think about a digital campaign, you can't have that these days without social media. And we really recommend that once you've created this kind of branded keyword for your campaign or organization, that you promote that across all the channels at your fingertips. And we definitely see that when you share your stories that include pictures and videos across text and email and social media, you're going to get the highest response rates because that ensures you reach across a wide range of demographics. And especially leveraging text, you're going to make sure that people can see that message without any of the social media algorithms getting in the way. But this is a great way to inspire new people who aren't getting your text messages to join in. And as always with social media, it pays off to participate in their emerging tools like live streaming. Facebook Live and Instagram Live are available for free, and these help you maximize your reach. So be sure to capitalize on that reach by encouraging people to text in, allowing you to capture their mobile numbers through these text keywords. Now, this here is an example of the Mobile Cause way of how we feel is best to communicate before and after your campaigns. So as you can see, there's different types of messaging that you'll want to send pre-event and post-event that really are contextual to give the information that they'll need. Reminders the week before, on the day of the event, definitely inspiring them to give, but sometimes simple things like directions or parking tips around your event, if it's an in-person event. And then, of course, thanking people and reminding them, if they couldn't attend or participate in the event that day, to do so afterwards. Now, obviously, this is what we've learned after conducting thousands of these events for nonprofits. And if that's something that is new to you, we could definitely help you out with our digital marketing services team that I work closely with here in customer success. And this is a team of folks that all have backgrounds in strategic marketing at nonprofits. So this team has really inspired me in a lot of ways, and they leverage all of their nonprofit knowledge and experience to help you set up campaigns so you don't have to struggle finding time or staff to dedicate to really develop a plan of action that will drive success for you. Now, I'm really excited to talk about this next piece called enhanced text messaging features, because the Mobile Cause platform is really the best platform out there that's pushing the boundaries of text message interaction with people. And this solution offers some really cool things like 280 characters on a text message that appear like one message. So you won't be bombarding people with, multiple bling blings on their phone alerts, and it'll just show up as one nice message that you can format. And the personalization feature has an even more appealing nature to it because, as you can see on the screen, you can address someone by their first name, and it doesn't even need to be as a salutation at the top. You could, say, we love you, Amber, like, thank you so much. You can tie this in right into the messaging to make it feel as personal as possible and really show appreciation to people. Now, in addition to the longer messages and personalization that you can put in here, we've also introduced analytics on these text messages so that you can see how many times someone has clicked on the link you provide there, and then following through with that, did they submit the form that you've linked them to, either by giving a gift or filling out a volunteer registration form or anything like that. This is, like I said, something I'm really excited about. We've been seeing customers leveraging this emerging technology with great success. Now I want to get to some excellent case studies that we have from some of our clients who have been using text message communication to drive that more of their engagement with their constituents, to move them up through that donor lifecycle. And Operation Underground Railroad is one of the most amazing out there. And this organization is giving a two-way communication platform where they can text out to folks who are interested in hearing about the actions that they're taking to save people who are in danger, and people can text into them to just to get in touch or to reach out and support their missions. We've definitely found that by keeping people engaged with what they're doing, that they're able to convert just people who are taking notice of them into donors, because they are truly sharing inspiring stories about kids that they're saving from child slavery. So, you could think about just little things that you do day to day that, people would think is interesting. Now, the next one I want to show you is Alley Theater. And this is a Houston-based theater that is a nonprofit, and they show a wide array of different plays and premieres through the local community. They're able to share stories about what's going on at the theater, and just do some great storytelling by sharing videos about what goes on behind the scenes, some success stories of people they've helped along the way by participating in the arts. And this organization had a large database of phone numbers, and using the mobile number verification system in our platform, they uploaded that list of supporters and were able to start sending messages right away. Now they're up to over 30,000 mobile subscribers. Now, they're also sending texts that are, giving an opportunity for people to give donations, and that's something that they do with very tactful storytelling to drive, the inspiration behind the organization and make sure that, when they do ask, that it's of a compelling nature and that people are, still interested in receiving these text messages on a continual basis. And that wraps up our text to give portion. I really appreciate everyone's time. It's been the honor for me to speak to all of you at once. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle, for sharing such valuable information with all of us. And as a quick reminder to our audience, if you haven't yet, please submit any questions you may have into that questions box there on your control panel. Before we take some time for Q&A, let's take another quick poll here. The question is, how likely are you to add technology to your fundraising plan this year? So I'll go ahead and launch the poll. Go ahead and make your selection from the window there and hit submit. Excellent. Just about half the audience voting thus far. I'll leave it open for another 10 seconds or so. Wonderful. So we are close to closing the poll. Go ahead and get your results in if you haven't submitted yet. And I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So looks like just about a third of you said most likely this year. About 30%, 29% there said most likely the next 3 months. And some of you are not sure or thinking about it next year. Fair enough. I'll go ahead and close this out. Thanks for your participation there. And at this point, we're going to switch gears for a few minutes to answer any questions that folks may have. So let's see. Our first question today is for Bradley. So can you tell me more about recurring donations and retention rates that you mentioned? Are there best practices that you might recommend for hitting those percentages for my organization?
Yeah, of course. I think for recurring donations, I think the biggest thing is just making the ask, right? We said that 42%. And again, I think 42% of, or I apologize, recurring donations typically tend to be 42% higher. And I think the nature of that is just being willing to be patient around getting people's to donate throughout the year on a monthly or quarterly basis. And that really makes it more palatable to be able to give a smaller amount over a longer period of time. I think one of the challenges that comes with recurring donations that you specifically have to pay attention to is typically those come through a credit card. And so one of the things that you will find is that the nature of credit cards is they end up expiring at some point. And so you do have to pay close attention to making sure that you have a system that will help alert you of recurring donations and when the credit card's expiring, and a process to make sure that people have the ability to easily update their credit cards. On the retention rate itself of 45%, how to increase that, I think one of the biggest things we see is that people tend, a live bunt report, I'm sure almost everybody is familiar with, and that is looking this year over last year. So I think one of the shortfalls of many live bunt reports and many systems is that it's looking at 2018 over all of 2017. And so we're in June of 2018. And what you might find if you're just looking at 2018 over 2017 is it looks like a lot of your donors are at risk for lapsing, but maybe you do a large end of year push and they just haven't got to the point yet to where they're likely to give again. And so what we would suggest to have the highest and most effective impact on retention rates is to ensure that you're looking at a rolling 12-month period, so that you're looking at the most recent 12 months over the same 12 months of last year. And what that puts you in the position to do is to really see that, wow, this person gave in June of last year but has not yet gave in June of this year. and especially when you get to July that they didn't give, it's the most timely way to ask for them to continue to give. And it's also an opportunity where I've seen some great organizations ask not only for them to retain them and ask them to give again this year, but maybe to ask them just to give it a little bit more, and the major impact that's going to allow your organization to do. And so I think affecting those two numbers really is making sure that you have timely data and that you are willing just to make the ask.
Indeed. Thank you. Next question here is for Kyle. Do I have to set up a thermometer to use a keyword in short code? Can I just do a donation form instead?
Sure, that's a great question. And the answer is no. You can use these keywords without the event thermometer. And that's a great way to message people or use these keywords for various purposes. So if you wanted to set up a keyword to direct someone to a volunteer form, you could set up that form without any monetary credit card transaction part on the form, and that keyword would direct the people to that form without creating a fulfillment reminder for any pledge. And if you do want to make it part of an ask, then you can make that a monetary pledging keyword. So that's a great question. And I think it's important to think about those different donor stages and setting up keywords that make sense for someone who's just seeing your organization for the first time, or a keyword where when they text in, they have the ability to give their first gift. The people who are just seeing your org for the first time, you might have them text into a keyword that doesn't take anyone to a form, but is just a subscription keyword. And it responds, thank you for subscribing, for news alerts from our organization. And then maybe after people have given their first gift, you can have a keyword to advertise to them that'll drive them to become a volunteer. Maybe after that, you'll start developing a crowdfunding campaign through the Mobile Cause platform, and you can reach out to people interested in applying to be a team captain on that crowdfunding page. So you could see how this could keep going, and you could have, again, a text keyword where that one takes people to a specific form where you've really accentuated or highlighted the recurring gift option, maybe to set up some membership tiers. And that really is, on the higher levels of your donor life cycle. But as Bradley pointed out earlier, this is one of the most important things you could strategize to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Kyle. Now, pivoting back to Bradley, what do you recommend I capture with my donation forms or sign-up forms?
I think that really depends on your organization and what is important to it. We see a lot of people capture information that can be simple as, in memory of and things like that. But I think most importantly is you want to be able to tie your donations, and you want to be able to make the form on the actual donor as simple as possible. Right? And you need to typically capture things like state, city, address, and stuff to attach to their credit card, of course. But I think what you really want to be able to do is on the back end of your systems is to be able to tie things back to specific campaigns or programs. Because what we find in many organizations is that they have multiple programs, and some of their donors feel much more passionate about one program rather than another, for any number of reasons. And so just the ability to be able to give someone an update on the specific program that they are supporting and how their donation is helping that organization make an impact, not just broadly, but overall specifically to that program, can be very impactful. And so I would say, you really want to think about, back up for a second, and think about what is it that you want to be able to message people about, and how do you want to segment your audience, and then make sure you're collecting that information about them. It may be, for some organizations, it may be age or state. If, let's say, we work with a lot of Girls on the Run organizations, and so they specifically want to make sure that they understand where people are coming from, what state or city someone's in, so that when they have a run in that area, they can make sure they are inviting someone from, Kentucky versus someone from Tennessee. They want to be able to ensure they segment their list that way. So those are a couple things I would suggest.
Cool. Thank you. Okay, so time is about up here. So our last question is for Kyle. I'm really intimidated by social media and communication strategy. I'm not sure exactly how to use it to the fullest extent. Do you have any resources that can help me with that?
Absolutely. So in addition to our terrific support department here, our digital marketing services team is a terrific resource, and they create multi-channel fundraising strategy plans. And so that includes social posts that will revolve around your campaigns. And these, again, are really great ways to maximize the use of these new technologies without any of the learning curve. Maybe you're low on time, or staff is not feeling that confident with it. This is a great way for us to kind of show you the ropes and make sure that you're avoiding any common mistakes that we would advise against. And it shows you some success that you could repeat yourself. We've found that when people combine these digital marketing services with the software we provide, that those orgs raise 4 times more than orgs who aren't using the services. So it's really great to consider that as a resource to help supercharge your department.
Wonderful. Well, at this point, I want to offer up a huge thanks to both of our speakers today. And I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for taking the time out of your morning or afternoon to attend today's webinar. If you have a question that wasn't answered today, you can certainly email marketing@mobilecause.com. We'll be sure to follow up with you there. And if what you heard today interests you and you'd like to learn more, you can connect to a fundraising expert at Mobile Cause today. Simply submit your response in the pop-up survey as you exit today's webinar. You can also reach us at 888-661-8804 or view our pricing at mobilecause.com. Once again, thanks to each of you for attending, and have a wonderful rest of your day and week.